Hello, everyone. For this project, I chose to look at the connection between enclosed space and imagination. I feel that the points that are brought up here are very much worth analyzing within just this short passage. And I feel that it also relates heavily to the yellow wallpaper, which is the first text that I thought of when I read this passage. So, within this project, I plan to show not only an interpretation of this passage, but also how it relates to works such as the yellow wallpaper. All right, so for this project, I've decided to break down Baclard's quote into three main points. The first point I believe he makes has to do with primal images, and he states that primal images are images that break out the primitiveness within us. Now, what I believe he means by primal are basic human traits. So primitiveness, meaning, before we have evolved into modern people. So if someone sees images of violence all of the time, especially towards innocent people, this is going to bring feelings of uh, anger and sadness and maybe even feelings of wanting revenge towards those people, such as what we witnessed in Las Vegas, the terrible tragedy. Images from something that bad can certainly bring out the primitiveness within us as human beings. And the second point that he seems to make is that drawing on that humans like to withdraw, and he says that we like to withdraw into a corner. Um, and I believe this is true. We're social beings, no doubt about that. We love to have friends and conversations and husbands and wives and children and jobs, but we also like to have our own space. We like our time alone. And that tends to be the time when we're most creative, when we allow ourselves to open up and be free with our thoughts. And so I think this is what he's getting at here with that. And he finally goes into the point that every space is a symbol of solitude for the imagination. So this made me think of when I was younger. My father, he was a painter, and he had a room where he would go and paint, and that was the only room that he would go and paint in. And Baclard says that we like to hide or withdraw into ourselves um, in this secluded space. And this is something I saw with my father. He would go in there, he would paint, and we knew not to bother him because that was his creative area. And so, as human beings, we need that space, that place where we can be creative and free. And this is always going to be a symbol of solitude for the imagination. So now I want to get into how this quote about enclosed space and imagination relates to the story of the yellow wallpaper. Now, the yellow wallpaper is a story we read the first week of this class, so I'm not going to summarize every detail or main point within the story, but rather I just picked out four main points which really coincide with this quote about space and imagination. So the first point has to do with the images within the wallpaper. And the images really made me think of this idea of primal images that Baclard states. Um, these images at first are sort of basic, but they start to grow more and more. They start moving around and dancing as the narrator stares at them more and more, and eventually they seem to become sinister um, in their being. Um, and this leads me to the second point, which is that in this story, the narrator is actually forced to withdraw. Of course, Backlard says we need to withdraw. But she finally comes to appreciate this withdrawal at the end, if you remember. She locks herself in the room because she doesn't want her husband to come in and take her away. And now, when I first read this story, and I still feel this way about the story, um, I read it in a feminist perspective. That's just the way I saw it, which was that she was critiquing sort of this medical treatment that clearly didn't help. But looking at it within the context of this quote, I see the story in a little bit of a different manner, which is that um, even though this space was not helpful to her at first, or she didn't see it as that, eventually she comes to accept and appreciate this because it brought out her imagination and it made her happy, even if it was seemingly driving her insane. And so, because of that, I say that the wallpaper is a symbol. And just like Backlard says, every space is a symbol. This wallpaper is a symbol for the imagination of the human mind. So now, where does this all leave us? Well, in conclusion, space clearly influences our thoughts, our the images in which we see, even, and ultimately our human imagination. And without the ability to withdraw from everyday life, humans may not have become as creative as we have come to be. And so I think that's ultimately what Backlard is getting at with this quote here. And I thank you very much for watching this short presentation. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them. I will be glad to read them. Thank you.